Good Monday, everyone. Welcome to the Volquest.com podcast with Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Jesse Simonton. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad to have you along with us on this Monday. It is camp week. Tennessee will hit the practice field on Friday. Jeremy Pruitt to address the media on Thursday. We'll get you ready for that in just a bit here on the podcast. But before we do that, let's jump into recruiting. Dead period lifted. Kids on campus this past weekend. Tennessee gets a commitment, Austin, from Jalen Hyatt. This is one, I don't want to say it's been done for a while, but it was almost a victory lap for Jalen Hyatt on Saturday. He knew what he was going to do before he came to town. As you kind of had alluded to the fact, Tennessee was in a great position with him. And once he decommitted from Tech, it was all Tennessee, really nobody else.
It was nobody else. I mean, it was all Tennessee. Tennessee worked that one hard early in the month of June. Got him up here for the cookout. He decommits 3 days later. And then just basically patiently waited the dead period out. And as soon as it lifted and Tennessee had the pool party, then he was back to get it done. So I mean, it's obviously a guy that Tennessee don't have on their roster as far as speed. And what else can he add? How much of an impact can he have on other guys? I do know he talks to Rakim Jarrett some, as several Tennessee commitments do. Harrison Bailey, so on and so forth. So those guys will continue to work on RJ and see what happens. Obviously, I don't think that one's happening for quite a while, but to me, it's definitely a game changer speed wise, because he is far different than any guy they've got on the roster, outside of maybe the Means kid who's shown some ability to run this summer in workouts.
Yeah, I don't know, Jesse, about a 4-3. I wasn't there on that deal, laser timed or whatever that was. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's a 4-3-9 or whether it's a 4-4-2 or whatever it is, it's speed, and Tennessee doesn't have enough of it right now.
Yeah, AP and I were talking to someone just the other day that was kind of bemoaning that fact and was saying how, even in the short time that Pruitt and these guys have been here, that they have already both added some speed and made some guys, on the roster improve sometimes, with the work with Fitz. I mean, would we hear, AP, that even a guy like Cheyenne LaBruza, was clocking, a sub 4.5. But they do not have, Tennessee, no matter what, Tennessee does not have a guy on their roster that's running a 4.31, which is what Jalen Hyatt, timed at an opening regional. You look at his highlights, you talk to his folks, and both his dad and his coach. I mean, he's a guy that he's very confident. I think you could kind of see him play in kind of maybe that Miko Hardman type role that Chaney used Miko at Georgia, where Jalen does most of his damage from the outside, but maybe you put him in the slot and kind of have him be that guy that just runs straight past the safety down the field. So he scored 21 touchdowns as a junior. His dad said he's only lost one game in his life, one football game in his life. It sounds like those Dutch Fork kids have been together since the 6th grade. So I mean, he's had the same. He and his quarterback, the kid who's going to play baseball at Clemson, have been together literally on the same team since the 5th grade. So there's certainly some continuity there. But Tennessee got a good one, and he's probably the first true receiver in this class, considering Callaway could play defense, Williamson could play, a couple positions. I think the likelihood is that Callaway's going to stick on offense. But now it's how do you kind of fill out that position around him? Rakim Jarrett being the number one target, Jones Bell being, right there at 1B, and then maybe, some lower options down the road.
Give Bryce Thompson a lot of credit for this because of the friendship there.
Yeah, I think so.
T. Martin, kind of the two mainstays for Tennessee here.
T did a great job early in June, but I think the comfort level of knowing that one of your really close friends, is here
and had success
as
a freshman.
Paid huge dividends in this deal.
Rob, I look at him. He's 6'2", 170. He's a little bit taller. But you kind of wonder if this is a little bit like a Denarius Moore type guy. Denarius was just a speed guy, known straight as a speed guy coming out of high school. Obviously developed. Chaney did good things with him in the 1 year that he had him here, and then he went on to an NFL career. Somebody asked me what's a comparison to Hyatt. That's kind of the first thing that jumps out to me, although Hyatt's a little bit thinner and a little bit taller.
Yeah, I just don't think you argue with taking speed like that. And this is maybe has no bearing, but remember back in the day, Lennon Creer was the big catch in that class. Denarius Moore was an afterthought.
Is it not always how it happens, though?
Trooper Taylor packaged him in there.
And Dan Williams, Malcolm Rawls.
Yeah,
Same thing.
great, another great comparison. And then, Denarius turns out to be a real playmaker here. And again, I mean, I don't want to say that Jim Chaney's the only reason that happened, but certainly that relationship did not hurt Denarius' development.
Yeah, and Denarius is what he was known for when he came out of high school in Texas was he was a high hurdles champion.
I was going to say he's a bit hurt. I thought it was hurdles.
Yeah, he was a hurdle state champion, speed guy. It was all about his speed, and obviously it translated into something positive. If that works out, if for Jalen Hyatt that way, that would be a positive for Tennessee for sure, because Denarius Moore changed. Maybe he didn't catch a ton of balls, but he, as you're saying, stretched the field so much that he created so much more for Gerald Jones and some other guys when they were here together that it worked out. And then obviously Denarius went on and had success in the National Football League as well. All right, let's talk about the rest of the pool party. Not a ton of 2020s who are here. I don't think that's necessarily a huge surprise. I think you're going to see in years to come those guys take fewer and fewer trips and late in July because of their high school senior season, and they've been on the road doing so much stuff in April, May, and June. But what are the other highlights of the pool party?
Yeah, I mean, I think it. The fact that Omari Thomas and Eason didn't make it in stings, but they didn't go anywhere else, and so that
to me it stings. But it would have really stung had they ended up
going to
Arkansas or
exactly.
Ole Miss. Or,
same for Ripka.
So outside of the Chris Morrises, obviously Jarrett was at Maryland. I mean, Tennessee, the big fish was Jay Hardy, and they got him back up here for the first time since the paintball weekend. I mean, he likes a lot of those Tennessee commits. I mean, he openly, said, Keyshawn talks to him about it every day. He and Keyshawn, they were on the same AAU basketball team several years ago. That they talked about it then, playing together. So I think Tennessee continues to trend in a nice way with Jay Hardy. The question is, AP, how long do you got to wait for him? That who knows? Because he seems insistent on wanting to take official visits. Is that just to kind of go see some schools? He had never seen Georgia, stuff like that. So
he's been to Georgia before.
Well, he said he didn't. He hadn't been. I think
never been to a game.
Never been to a game or something like that. Yeah, and so he wants to LSU, Florida. How many of these visits does he actually take? We'll see.
Well, yeah, best laid plans. I mean, everybody says that stuff, and then ends up, you start looking around, and let's say, Tyler Barron wants to get in sooner rather than later. I mean, I still think that's a fall decision for him. You've got, Jay's a guy that wants to take trips. So I think Tennessee's in a phenomenal spot there. There's some talk on the board this morning, and there's a lot of angst out there because, Antonio Johnson decommitted and stuff. But, if you land Jay Hardy and some of these other guys in state, like you're going to move up the rankings if you start adding Jay, Tyler, Omari Thomas. Even if you don't land Ripka, if you land 3 of the 4 D linemen, you're going to naturally move up the pecking order as far as class rank. And so I think Jay Hardy is pivotal. He and Tyler Barron, those 2 guys are extremely close, and then Keyshawn's kind of the conduit there as well. So, I think Jay's a guy that Tennessee couldn't be in a better spot for right now.
Keyshawn Lawrence is like Kevin Bacon. It's like 7 degrees. I mean, he knows everybody, it seems like, in state in some capacity. Like he's played some game, like he was at AAU ball here, they played youth football together, or they were at everybody you talk to in state talks about Keyshawn Lawrence. Yeah, I played with him. I mean, he must have played on every team in the state at some point in time growing up. You know what I mean?
You say it's Kevin Bacon, that's a great reference. I'm going Red from Shawshank Redemption because, he's the guy you go to if you need something. I mean, I can get it done. I mean, Keyshawn gets things done, and obviously, he was the life of the party on Saturday at the pool party, and just that core group of guys is extremely close. I understand that, and even for the staff, there are some of these guys that aren't in that they'd really like to be in, but I still think those guys are, heading
follow
here.
The visits where they keep showing up here and they're not showing up other places. I mean, it kind of says all you need to know.
And that's the only thing that I worry about with Omari Thomas is, he did show up here in June.
But he hadn't been around those guys.
But he's not been up here a ton.
Same for Ripka.
And so that's where, I would tend to worry more about him and or Trayvon. Although, Trayvon ain't really going anywhere either. I mean, like
No,
he's
but
been
it
to
is-
Kentucky a couple times, been to Tennessee a couple times. I mean, he's
But
not.
Tennessee is not sitting in the catbird seat with either one of those guys.
Correct.
Like they are
with
Jay
Hardy
Hardy
or
and
Tyler
Barron.
Barron. Yeah, agreed.
And I will say this about the Antonio Johnson thing. I mean, we kind of teased that this might happen, on Friday during the mailbag. To me, this is now. It just makes it that much harder to keep Spraggins. Now they're gonna work like hell to make sure that he stays in the boat. But now that his teammate has opened things back up, we know that Spraggins committed kind of on a whim here. First big Power 5 offer, has now gotten sniffs from a lot more schools. That one's going to be one that Tennessee's going to have to fight, tooth and nail to really hang on to.
What do they do safety-wise here? I mean,
It's me. Above
Mordecai?
Antonio Johnson was Mordecai McDaniel.
right.
He
and,
was.
and Mordecai's going to do something in August.
Yeah, I think like August 21st. They're right around the same time Ripka does something.
Yeah.
But that's got to. Am I negative Nancy here? That seems to have a Penn State vibe to it, or do we not know? Is Penn State the assumption because
I think Penn State's
of their ties to Maryland and the fact that it's closer?
I think that that's the nail on the head. I mean, like if I was a betting
And
man,
it's the last place he went.
if I was a betting man, I would lean there. But do I think that it's just a lock, stock, done? I don't think that.
Okay.
But I do think like if I was percentaging it, it would be above 50%.
Just
to Penn
because
State.
of those things, not because intel suggests that it's Penn State.
Yeah.
But more last visit there, closeness,
the
school
Penn
ties
State's
to Penn
yeah,
State.
there you go.
Okay, I got you. So it's not necessarily stuff you're hearing whispers about. It's
No.
just you're trying to
But it is just those
try
two.
to find the logic. So that's the two at safety.
Right now, I mean, I think that may be a position that do you evaluate down the road, and then, or do you look to take a spot somewhere else? We'll see.
All right. What else from the weekend? And not just the pool party, but you got my man the tight end from Vegas in for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, he was here for 3 days: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then went to Georgia for a few days. I mean, I think that's setting up as a Tennessee-Georgia battle. I mean, like I know he kind of like maybe put out Miami was another team, but I still think Tennessee or Georgia.
So what does it say about Eric Gilbert in Georgia, you think, Austin?
Because Tennessee's recruiting him as a receiver, I don't think it hurt. It matters necessarily here, but down there, I mean, they've got again, it's the perks of being a program that's been winning the last few years. I mean, they've got the Theo Johnson kid, they have Washington, they have Gilbert. I mean, they've got several options down there at tight end that are really top shelf guys. So. I think Eric's just kind of doing his own thing and is in no rush and is not going to be pressured by anybody. If you pressure Eric Gilbert, I think you'd probably lose him.
Well,
Don't you think?
You got Clemson involved there. What do we think? I mean, he was at Clemson this past weekend, right?
Yes.
And then you got
Alabama.
Alabama's involved with that. Is that kind of the four schools you think?
Yeah,
or is
I think it's those.
somebody else involved.
No,
there?
I think it's those four. I think he's definitely going to stay somewhere in the southeast. But Gilbert's a guy that folks thought he was going to be done 6 months ago, and then Tennessee had all that buzz, and then that seemed to have faded when he went to Bama 2 out of 3 weekends. So it seems like that one's just going to play itself out in the fall, and we'll see. I'm not sure really anybody. I think every school kind of has their own little pitch. Tennessee's obviously going hard after you can play receiver here, you can stay with your quarterback. Harrison Bailey's on him every day. But then when you hear Gilbert's own quotes, he talks about specifically his connection with the staffs at Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson. Those were the schools that he mentioned. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I think he likes it that way. I mean,
I would agree with that.
I don't think he's calculating in terms of trying to throw people off the scent intentionally, but I think he gives everybody their
And he
own
truly
set
may
of
not
vibe, because he doesn't, he probably doesn't know right now.
And that paints a stark picture of the challenge for Jeremy Pruitt and the staff because of recruiting. I mean, not just him, but in other cases, the recruiting 3 programs have played for the national championship in the past 2 years.
Yeah, and I mean that's
And look set up to keep doing it.
right. I mean, you're talking about 2 tight ends, and you need tight ends in this class. You're a finalist for 2 5-star tight ends. But to get them, you've got to
Tennessee
be.
says don't call Gilbert a tight end.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. Tight end and a receiver.
I'm just playing.
two 5-stars that way. But you got to beat out Alabama, Clemson, Georgia for them. Essentially, is what you got to do, which is a heck of a challenge.
I mean, I just think look at the board. The whole board this morning's kind of been all of an uproar. I mean, like, I don't know what they want. I mean, Tennessee is legitimately recruiting for top shelf guys against top shelf programs that have been winning.
But they don't want their team set in the bottom 4 or 5 spots in SEC rankings if they're going to close the gap with the rest of the SEC. That's their angst this morning.
The problem is Rome wasn't built in a day.
Well,
I mean, to me, like, you have to have, Jesse and I both said it in that thread, you have to have that Rick Barnes type of year that was 2 years ago. So develop guys, get them to overachieve a little to show, oh, hey, look.
Well, to me too, it's July. And that was kind of my message in that it's July. Let's if you want to really press the panic button, let's see what happens after the season come December. And then it's how are you kind of calibrating yourself where there seems to be some frustrations with
because if you go land these guys in
that aren't
state,
landing said guys.
If you land the guys in state, these 4-star guys, Barons, Hardys, Omari Thomas. Let's say they don't land Chris Morris, but they land the rest, which means landing Ribka too. That's 4-star defensive linemen. Then Niedermeyer is Niedermeyer and lands, let's say, 1 or 2 of these studs, whether he flips a Thieu Jones-Bell and adds a Savell Smalls, whatever. We're just throwing out names here. I mean, Tennessee's going to be right there in the top 10 class, which is what I mean. I understand it's not as good as Georgia or Alabama, but I mean, like, they're wanting to Texas A&M in recent time has been a more successful program, and they have a national championship winning head coach.
Right, and the fans' point to take the counter to the devil's advocate is second-year coach Texas A&M's got that team 9th in the country in rankings. Second-year coach at Florida's got them 10th in the country. Second-year coach at Florida State's got them 11th in the country right now. First-year coach coming out of retirement at North Carolina's got them 12th in the country right now.
See, that one would concern me way more than the other ones.
And to your point too, I don't want to totally dismiss AP's point, but the hypotheticals that AP laid out, absolutely, to the fans' angst right now, could not happen.
Yeah.
Right. You could not land Savell Smalls and some of these, big fish at the end. And so even if you do land a really nice in-state crop, to make this truly a top class, Tennessee's going to have to win some really competitive out-of-state battles. Now, and that's where it's going to be hard.
Tennessee's sitting at 12 commitments. North Carolina's sitting at 21. We all know that the weighting of the extra commitments there changes that. Okay, a great deal. Florida's at 18. Florida State's at 19 commits. Texas A&M's at 17 commits. So those guys have 5 more guys in the rankings, 6 more guys in the rankings, which changes your rankings a lot.
A&M, second-year coach, national championship winning head coach. Florida and Florida State, well, I think Mullen's a solid football coach. Okay, but I mean, and Willie Taggart, yeah. But, like, it's a lot easier to recruit the state of Florida when you're in Florida. The one that would worry me there, but as you said, 21 commits, is the state of North Carolina, is what Mac Brown's doing from a ranking standpoint. But it is 21-12. And if you add, I guarantee you, Tennessee, if Tennessee added the guys I just talked about, not counting the West Coast guys,
but just
they end up higher than North Carolina does.
Sure. But I think the other thing, too, again, to continue devil's advocate, Rob, is there's a perception that the second year is supposed to be the year where you make your decision. You almost make your decision whether the guy's going to make it or he's not going to, which is unfair.
I think it's way unfair.
But you look at and Kirby inherited a much better situation. Jimbo inherited a better situation at Texas A&M. But the perception is year 2 is the identifier. You've either, people decide based on recruiting and what they look like on the field from year 1 to year 2. A lot of fans make a decision whether that guy can win or not based on what he does in year 2. And to your point, Rome's not built in a day because Tennessee's in a far bigger mess than those other schools were.
That would be my main point, is that it's relative. And you won 0 SEC games 2 years ago, right before Jimmy came in. You just had an NFL draft where Tennessee didn't have a player selected. It's not. It's just apples and oranges to compare it to some of these places. Now, does he need to show progress? Yeah, but expecting him to win 9 games or he's an abject failure, I think that's ridiculous.
Which goes back to year 2 for Kirby and them. Year 2 for Kirby and them. Early on in that recruiting class, they had a little bit of trouble getting traction. They had some guys commit, then decommit, and then when they won all those games, whoosh, they all came back in. Sound effects are free on the podcast. They all came back in, and so and I'm not saying Tennessee's going to end up with some like juggernaut top 3 class like Georgia rolled in, but my point is like Tennessee goes out and they they go out and win 8-9 football games.
But it was
this year.
easier for Kirby to win in year 2 because
Sure
he
was.
inherited such a better football team.
Agreed.
Which is why you can't make a decision in year 2 in this scenario because Georgia was so far further along talent-wise to what Kirby inherited to what Jeremy inherited. I think.
I agree. The issue that Jeremy's bucking up against in terms of trends is that it wasn't just Kirby, and I think that's where some fans are trying to say, all right, what's going to happen this season? Since the SEC championship game was instituted, basically you could pretty much tell the way historically it's gone from. It was Mullen at Mississippi State. It was Richt at Georgia. It was Meyer at Florida. On year 2 was kind of the denominator. If you won 10 games, that Chizik did it at Auburn. Now Chizik wasn't some great coach, but they went from a losing record to the dang national championship game, and that's where fans I think see. Well, if we can't do that, what does that mean for us?
You see Nick Fairley or Cam Newton around here?
But it doesn't. But that doesn't matter. I mean, I agree with you when you look at it that way. But for fans who have gone through 10 years of nothing, they don't What do you mean it's going to take 5 years to turn it around?
I know for 10 years they've heard to be patient. They're
Right.
tired of hearing to be patient. I get it.
That's why you see angst this morning. It's like all these other coaches in year 2. Okay, I mean Oregon. Cristobal's in his second year at Oregon. They're off and running, and Oregon's been a better program. All those programs have been better programs, but Tennessee fans are like, when's it going to be?
I mean, even Muschamp, won 11 games in year 2. And again, he inherited a better situation, but that's the sort of stuff that folks look at.
That's the precedent that's been laid out. It's unfair, but that's the precedent, and that's why fans don't have patience anymore because everybody expects year 2 because so many coaches at other programs in this conference and around the country have done big things in year 2 that I think that kind of works works against new coaches.
If we want to transition to the team here, which is why the next month is going to be paramount for this football program.
It's why you need some news on Aubrey Solomon, okay? Because you need some help there. It's why you need some freshmen, Rob, to step in and
junior
make
college
some hay.
defensive lineman.
Yeah, you need Savion Williams to be a player, okay? Not a hype machine of tweets, but a guy who goes out and makes plays. Darrell Middleton's got to be better than I think a lot of us think he may be coming out of the gate. You're going to have help on the offensive side of the ball with Eric Grays and those kinds of guys. That's why it is, And by the way, I didn't even mention 2 freshman offensive tackles out there as well. So, that's why the next few weeks are so important for this football team. And as you look at it, and Jeremy Pruitt addresses the media on Thursday, and they go to the practice field on Friday, we'll obviously recap a lot of what Pruitt talks about in our Friday podcast. But what's in week 1? What is the biggest? First 10 days. What is the biggest question Jeremy Pruitt's got to find an answer to?
I mean, to me, you could pick any number.
I don't know.
The JUCO defensive linemen are too. I mean, they're way high on any list that I compile. I mean, just because of there's nothing there. I mean, and that's a critical spot, obviously, in this league.
It's both lines of scrimmage. I mean, it's the 2 tackles and then the 2 JUCO defensive tackles. So, I mean, I agree with that.
I think it's Trey Smith.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you could pick any number.
I think how does his body react as they build him in and he does more and more? How does everything react to that? Because it's, a year ago everything was okay this time too, and obviously it worked for a while. But how does he?
Well, I think likely that's something I think we always talk about. You don't know what a recruiting class is going to look like till 2 or 3 years down the line. I don't think you're going to know about Trey and how his body's going to react internally until 6 weeks from now. You know what I mean? Because they're gone. And I don't think he's going to I don't think they're just going to go, oh, they're back. I think it's going to be a gradual build-up. And then if they're back, they're back. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I see your point because that's what happened a year ago. I don't know from a medical standpoint. I don't know where he's at. I don't know what the plan is for treatment.
I think
management, all that
physically
stuff.
he is in a world better shape than he was a year ago. Last year,
I think he did a
was
lot more like this summer than he did previously.
Last year, I think he did bare minimum, if anything, and just to try to get cleared. And then basically went there did the test, you're cleared, and he went straight to the practice field and was out of shape. And I mean, I thought
played a position he wasn't comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, So I mean, I think physically he's probably way better than he was. He's lighter, which I think probably helps him.
Yeah, we'll see.
I mean, there's so many. I mean, this can almost tease a piece that might be on the site in the coming days. But I mean, there's so many pressing questions that need to be answered in the next month. Who's going to be the backup quarterback?
Yeah.
What tailbacks do they believe they can actually count on in terms of rotational snap? Rob talked about the JUCO defensive lineman. Is Brandon Kennedy as good as everyone seemed? We just assumed Brandon Kennedy was this guy a year ago.
Can he stay healthy?
And
can he get through camp
yeah.
healthy?
I mean, and so there's just what does the outside linebacker spot opposite of Darrell Taylor look like? How ready is a guy like Henry T? We're told that he knows this defense. What does that mean? How does that translate into fall camp? I mean, there's going to be a lot of stuff that needs to be answered, in the next 4 weeks before they play Georgia State.
How much of that though is a little bit of because we know the ins and outs and we know the personnel so well that you pick some scabs that maybe. Yes, these are questions, but they're not necessarily that Tennessee's got this far superior amount of questions compared to everybody else. Just because you know all the ins and outs, you pick them a little bit harder. The same way the 180-degree opposite of that is a lot of people pick Tennessee to be the surprise team this year because they look and say, oh, you're returning 8 starters on offense or 9 starters on offense. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I agree. I agree with that statement completely. And because the funny thing about that is, that people said but people said the same thing about Vanderbilt for years. They return 1 million starters. Well, if a bunch of the starters aren't worth it to, what does that mean? Now Tennessee believes that they have infused this roster with more talent, with this 2 freshman offensive tackles, with the Quavaris Crouch, the Henry T's. But how does that, how ready are they to play week 1, I think is going to be the question that we'll see over the next month. Is that picking scabs? I don't know. I think Tennessee certainly hopes that all 4 of those guys are going to be ready to play against Georgia State and then absolutely ready to, tee it up against BYU the next week.
And the question that really has been overlooked a lot because there is so much talk, and rightfully so, about the line of scrimmage, Rob, is who's going to be the nickelback?
I think
because we know how important that position is in this defense.
In this day and age, I mean, big question, but I mean, I think they have so many bodies back there. I mean, like quality athletes. And we saw what Jeremy did with 2 freshmen last year.
That was a sore spot on defense a year ago. I mean, the numbers back that up. They did not defend.
I mean, is that Buchanan?
Is he healthy?
I mean, that's an experienced guy. I mean, a guy.
And he played a lot of snaps.
You feel good about being able to hold up in this league.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think a really smart player, which at that position, I think is a skill you need to have. But I mean, I just think they have so many bodies in the secondary now compared to last year when you throw with Burrell, Fields, Flowers a year older, you're better.
Kenneth George, I think he's gonna be in the mix for that nickel spot. They are very high on Warren Burrell too, right, AP? I mean, you're talking. I mean,
you're right though, Rob. More bodies, more quality bodies.
Yeah.
And Burrell could give them options because if they like what they see from him on the outside, we saw them explicitly experiment with moving Bryce inside, and so does that give you some options to maybe move him to that? If that star position really is the most important position, might be good to put your best player
there. And
if
you feel good about Taylor and Thompson holding up outside one-on-one, that just makes everything so much easier. I mean, that's one of the basic tenets of playing defensive football.
Yeah, no question. So plenty of stuff to discuss, plenty of question marks surrounding the start of this camp, and obviously Jeremy Pruitt will address some of those on Thursday at his press conference, and then on Friday we'll get to see what this team kind of looks like firsthand. And obviously they won't be in pads, but you'll get a look at, and we'll have photo galleries and video of how all those guys look. Rob, as we wrap it up right quick, kind of quiet basketball at this point. Any news, any highlights of note?
Just this last evaluation period was last week. The highlight was Tennessee and everybody else at the USA Basketball Olympic Training Facility out in Colorado, where Keon Johnson had a really nice weekend. I don't know, I don't know if it's a big deal, but I do think he was a standout. And I'm not saying he's going to be a 5-star, but I think he's put himself in that conversation. And we're not talking about a huge bump. He's number 34 right now, but just the big thing is, I mean, we're 8 days away from him making an announcement, and again, I feel pretty confident saying he's not told Tennessee anything for sure yet. But man, that one just feels like the Vols right now, and that'd be pretty enormous. I mean, 2 top 30 type commits, and before you exit summer, it gives you a lot of momentum heading into the fall.
Yep, certainly does. So that's the highlight for Tennessee basketball right now on the heels of football getting started. But as Rob mentioned, we're just over a week away from Johnson's announcement. We'll have plenty of coverage of that coming up, leading up to that announcement and the announcement of that as well. That's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Volquest.com podcast. For Jesse Simonton, Austin Price, and Rob Lewis, I'm Brent Hubbs. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Monday, everybody.